A unique initiative is happening this week at Dunkin' Donuts Park in Hartford. It's a training event this Thursday at the Yard Goats game, and it's called Stop the Bleed. Trinity Health of New England is looking to empower as many people as they can with the tools that might save a life someday. Here to talk more about Stop the Bleed, that initiative, I'm happy to have Dr. David Shapiro from Trinity Health of New England joining me this morning. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Good day, Tim. How you doing?
Yeah, glad to have you here. Very curious to see what this is all about. Why don't you just start by telling us what the goal of the session is?
Well, the goal is to say do just what you said. Empower people and train them with the skills and the interest to help somebody else during a bleeding emergency. That's really as simple as it is.
All right. So how does that training work? How long is it? What can people expect?
Well, the training itself comes from a couple different organizations who work together to create the curriculum, and it's from the American College of Surgeons, it's from the NAEMT, which is an emergency medical organization, and a few other organizations got together to create a curriculum that tells people how to respond to someone when they're bleeding. So we've all experienced cutting our hand with a bagel, or putting an arm through a window maybe in our families, or seeing a car crash. Anything that can cause someone to bleed. The goal is to have someone at the ready anytime as a bystander to stop that bleeding. So really, the course itself is about a 25 to 30 minute lecture of sorts, didactics online or on a screen, where we go through the steps. Then we have a hands-on training that takes a couple minutes per person, and we train them in the 3 basic steps. The first step is really calling 911. If you see an emergency, you got to call for help, because help will get there as soon as they can, but starting the process is really calling first. So calling 911 is first. Second is applying direct pressure to the spot that's bleeding. Most bleeding can stop from direct pressure being applied to it. So if you have a cut in your hand, you hold it tight and it'll stop bleeding in most cases. If someone has bleeding that gets worse after that, and it's a larger wound, we can actually take a bandage or even a piece of a t-shirt or something that's nearby, like a bandana or a handkerchief, and pack it into the wound or stuff it inside that cavity. And that helps the bleeding stop as much as it can. And then the last thing is the application of a tourniquet. And many people have heard that tourniquets can be dangerous or not put on correctly, and that's true, but they've come back into vogue, and the literature says that they're actually an effective means to treat bleeding when the first 2 steps don't work. So really, it's about calling 911, putting direct pressure on a bleeding wound, packing that wound, and applying a tourniquet if necessary.
How much can this help? I know that's a very simple general question, but of course a lot of people seeing this think, chances are I'm never going to use it. But in your line of work, I imagine seeing firsthand just how much of a benefit this can have to be done, not by you, but by somebody who's in a more immediate responder. Just how much of a difference can it make?
So bleeding is the #1 cause of preventable death anywhere. So we talk about things like cancer and heart disease and car crashes and gunshots, and everywhere in between, people can get hurt badly from those things. But when it comes to all those mechanisms, bleeding is what leads to the most death. So and the most harm. If someone has bleeding and we can stop it as early as possible, the likelihood of having bad outcomes goes way down. So if you can stop the bleeding at the beginning and really eliminate that possibility, it prevents many, many other bad things from happening. When we bleed, we become cold or hypothermic. When we bleed, we get acid buildup in our blood. And when we bleed, we use up all those factors in our blood that help blood clot. And you can imagine if those 3 things happen, we keep bleeding. And when we keep bleeding and losing blood, we become worse and worse until our blood pressure drops and our hearts can stop. So if we can apply simple pressure to even a hand or an arm wound, or put direct pressure on somebody's head when they have a scalp wound, all those things can make a difference with just putting pressure, packing a wound, and if possible, putting a tourniquet on.
Last question, how can people get involved this Thursday?
So this Thursday, May 20th, is the second day that the state is basically opening up, and Yard Goats, the Hartford Yard Goats at Dunkin' Donuts Park have the entire park open, except for the little buffer zone for the Major League Baseball's requirements. But the entire park is open, so anyone who's a ticketed member of the game, someone who's bought a ticket to the game, can come on down and get taught for free. Since we're teaching the course on the big screen for the 15 to 25 minutes before the game, and then the hands-on during the 3.5 hours of the game, Anyone who's a ticketed attendee of the game can get taught for free. Bring your family and your loved ones, get tickets on the Dunkin' Donuts Park or Yard Goats website, and come on down to the game. If you can't come to that game, you can look at us on our St. Francis website. We can arrange a course for you for free for as many people as you need. Just give us a call.
Stop the Bleed happening at Dunkin' Donuts Park this Thursday. Dr. Shapiro, who knows, maybe this training will save a life someday. Thank you so much for taking the time to get involved and tell us about it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate being here.